promos?
Yeah, I don't have to. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I hope there's people here. Yes, there are. Yay. Okay. So just tell me if you can hear me. And then we can get started. I always wait for people to tell me this. Let's see who's here. Yes, yes, yes. Yay. Okay, so we're going to get started. So before I bring up the PowerPoint, I'm going to tell you a story. Kind of a sad story that happened today, but I'm telling you this for a reason. And it has to do with my brother, who has or had a lovely little dog named Major. He was a miniature schnauzer. And unfortunately, he had to put Major down today. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because Major had melanoma, malignant melanoma. His breed is particularly susceptible to this. He's one of the breeds that is susceptible to malignant melanoma. It started about 6 months ago in his toe, but they didn't know that. He just had this toe that kept bleeding and it wouldn't stop bleeding. So the vet recommended that the toe be amputated, which they had done. Did she send that toe for a biopsy? Nope. Fast forward a few months later, he starts getting these lumps. They grow very fast. They were operated on and removed. And of course, when they sent those to the lab, they were obviously diagnosed as malignant melanoma. And that was about 2 months ago. And about a month ago, well, or six weeks to 2 months ago, it's hard to say. And just over about a month ago, you know, it took forever for the diagnosis to come back. So even though he was operated on, they didn't get the diagnosis for like a couple of weeks or so more. So about a month ago, they found out that it was malignant melanoma, and they knew instantly they didn't want to put this dog through chemo and radiation because they'd have to drive to Guelph to get it done, and it's just not fair to the animal and whatever. So they decided to do alternative stuff. Now, just as this is a dog who ate really, really well. My brother would cook all the food for him. My brother would brush his teeth at night. Like every night he'd get the toothbrush out and brush his teeth. Like, this is a really well cared for dog. He even got, I think he even had some supplements that the dog took and whatever. But, you know, they weren't as alternative as, say, I am with my cats. So he would have been vaccinated. And when he had the surgeries, and they didn't realize they should be giving him probiotics at the same time he was on antibiotics. So, you know, it wasn't a perfect scenario. And this actually was a rehome dog. They got him at 9 months. So his start in life wasn't that great. He was with a very old lady who was blind, and his first 9 months he was kept basically in a cage because she couldn't really look after him, and that's when they decided to rehome him. Anyway, but the reason I'm telling you this story is because this dog had the kitchen sink thrown at him from an alternative perspective. So not only did I contact Marina, who made suggestions and made arrangements to get Silvestrol cream, which is specifically for melanomas, and Silvestrol's into the dog. There's a company that I like ordering products from called Pet Wellbeing. They had an anti-cancer, and they also have a probiotic, so they got that. A friend of my brother's knew a woman who specializes in dogs, and she makes her own supplements, so she had recommended some, and Marina recommended some other things. And they were feeding him all organic, and they took him to a holistic vet who recommended frankincense and lavender be put on any bumps that he had. And, you know, so like this is what they've been doing for the last month or so. And unfortunately, it was for naught. You know, he got worse, and last night he could barely breathe, and he kind of collapsed, and he'd been having these breathing issues for about the last week or so. Anyway, long story short, they made the decision to put him to sleep today because they had already decided that if he appeared to be suffering in any way, shape, or form, they were going to, you know, not prolong his misery no matter how sad they were. And I'm telling you this story because I think it's important as holistic practitioners that we are realistic as to what holistic can do. If Major had received alternative measures 6 months ago when the toe thing was happening, maybe there would have been a different outcome. More than likely there would have been a different outcome. But there's only so much what we do can do. And sometimes what we do prolongs in a good way, so they get a few more years of qualitative life. And sometimes it really works and they go on for eons. And I'm not just talking about animals, I'm talking about humans too. And then sometimes it doesn't. So I say that because sometimes when it doesn't work, people get discouraged, especially when they're in our line of work. We get discouraged because we believe in this a lot. And I totally believe in the power of the foods we recommend, the supplements we recommend, the approach we take. And while Major didn't receive the ultimate in holistic sort of treatment until he was too far gone, you know, sometimes we try to do that with our family or friends or our own animals. And I just wanted to tell that story and share that story because I think that there was nothing else. Like, my brother and sister-in-law did the right thing. They chose to help him fight as best they could to see what happened. And they were even buying stuff on the weekend. So we put him on Wobenzyme, like the things and I was even a little concerned we were asking too much of this poor little dog's body with all the things that he was on. But I just think it's important to know that, you know, sometimes you get a really good result and sometimes you don't. And it doesn't mean that the effort wasn't worth it. And I hope that doesn't sound like too much of a downer, because I don't really mean it that way. I just mean, you know, we want to be realistic. And if you're working with a client and things don't go as you wish, especially if they have cancer or something like that, don't beat yourself up about it. There's only so much we can do. And there's a lot of factors involved, right? So one of the reasons I'm happy we're doing this topic tonight is because this is a factor we've never talked about. And the more I was researching into it, the more it's like, aha, this is a big piece of the puzzle. And I think you're going to find that there's some really useful information here that may help you help more clients. Again, we're still talking about pieces here and factors. We're not talking about black and white or anything like that. But I just thought, you know, since this happened today, I would mention it because, you know, even my brother's not disappointed with alternative because it didn't work. I mean, he understood that it was too late. Like, you're asking too much of the supplements. They're not drugs. They're not, you know, cure-alls. And sometimes I read things that are written by holistic nutrition people or NDs or alternative NDs, and they have they could be like blog posts or something like that, and they say things like, you know, this is the substance that cures cancer or something to that effect. And I always really don't like that, because I know it's so multifactorial, and I know that an alternative approach to cancer requires multiple things going into the person, including when it's people, body, mind, spirit work. And yes, you can do body, mind, spirit work for animals, but that's a whole other topic, which I won't get into, but I know people who do it. And trust me, I even kind of broached that subject with my sister-in-law just to see if she, you know, because they were kind of willing to do just about anything, but it didn't seem to go over that well. It didn't go over negative, but she didn't sort of jump at the opportunity. So I just want to sort of put that all in context before I started this particular presentation. Okay, so I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint. Is that right, Marina? Marina?
I can see you.
Good. And now it's full screen, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we're talking about understanding the mouth microbiome tonight. And all right, so you kind of have to look at the mouth as the gateway to the body. I'm sure many of you do see it that way, especially you know, you can't separate the mouth from the GI tract, and we have such a focus on the GI tract these days, and it's important. You have to consider the mouth in this light. It turns out it's quite complex, just like the gut. I wouldn't say it's as complex as the gut, but it's up there. And it plays a very important role in overall health, as you're going to see. It also plays an important role in gut function. So I thought that was also a really good reason for us to have this conversation. And the problem is it's not as well researched as the gut. And I don't consider the gut all that well researched. Like, we're just at the beginning stages of truly understanding what the gut is all about, and, you know, all the things that it does and all the different strains, and, you know, trying to figure out how do you balance it and all this stuff. So we're at the beginning stages with the gut, but there's like thousands and thousands and thousands of research studies about the gut, and not as much research about the mouth and the mouth microbiome. But we're getting there. So many studies have been linking oral disease to systemic disease, and so that's kind of where I want to sort of frame this conversation today. Gum disease and other oral diseases produce chronic low-grade inflammation throughout the body. So we've talked a lot about, and, you know, everywhere you go and you're reading, they talk about low-grade chronic inflammation being linked to so many different health conditions. So gum disease and oral problems are also falling into that category, as well as being a factor as to why you have the low-grade inflammation. And the mouth is home to hundreds of species of microorganisms, and they, again, just like the gut, are both beneficial and pathogenic in nature. And these are what they call commensal. So commensal means that they're native to the area they're found in. So a lot of the bacteria that you have problems with, or the beneficial bacteria that are in they're all called commensal because they're not foreign to the body. They actually live there naturally. Okay, so kind of think of the mouth as the headwater or the source, and the gut as the river. So if you know anything about rivers, there's always a starting point for the river. That's the mouth. And then everything that the mouth has, or the headwater in this case, flows into the river, or what we're talking about, the gut. So it's all starting there in the mouth. And the mouth sets the stage for everything in the GI tract and the body as a result of this. There's over 700 species present, but they live in different colonies located in different areas. So that's not dissimilar to the gut either, right? Because you have, like, basically mainly some streptococcus and mainly lactobacillus in the small intestines, and then the colon you have E. coli and Clostridium strains and bifidus bacteria, and so it's not too dissimilar from the way the gut is set up. And these bacteria colonies are located on the tongue, the hard palate, the teeth, and then the teeth surface that's above and below the gums. And this is the breakdown, if you want to look at it from types of bacteria, or phylums as they're called. So I know we're used to looking at lactobacillus and bifidus and things like that. But before they get to that, they have these bigger categories. And if you're in the Healthy Gut program, you are familiar with, if you've gotten past module 1, that is, you're familiar with firmicutes and Bacteroides, proteobacteria, and actinomyces, or sometimes it's called actinobacteria. As you can see from this little diagram, 46% of the bacteria in your mouth are firmicutes. And then of that 46%, another 46% are streptococcus. And there are good strep and there's bad strep. So strep throat obviously comes from a bad strep. Most of the oral problems that you have, not all of them, but a lot of the bacteria that are causing problems are strep. But there's also beneficial streps too, and they play a very key role as well. And you can see there's also lactobacillus strains in this 46% of the firmicutes, something called Veillonella. I've never heard of that. So again, there are a lot of strains in the mouth bacteria that are not the ones we've been talking about in the gut. And of course, there's overlaps with gut bacteria. Actinobacteria or actinomyces is where you find the bifidus bacteria. So there's lots of overlap, but there's also some new strains as well. So in terms of bacteria in the mouth versus that in the colon or the small intestines, it's about a 45% overlap. So that means that a lot of what is happening in the mouth is going to make its way into the GI tract, because we swallow 1 trillion bacteria every day. And you just thought you were swallowing. Many of these bacteria that we're swallowing are seeding the small intestines and the colon. So this is where that 45% overlap comes in. And if we learn nothing else tonight, that's reason enough to focus on the mouth microbiome. The fact that it's playing a role as to what's in your small intestines and your colon. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about saliva, which plays a very important role in our mouth microbiome. So its basic job is to protect teeth and limit bacteria. That's basically what it does. And this is aside from, yes, it has enzymes that aid with digestion. So this is, and there's hormones, you've got leptin and ghrelin in there. So aside from that, this is its basic function. So there's a number of different chemicals, or you want to call them enzymes in some cases, that are present in saliva that are very essential to you helping you have a good mouth microbiome. So one is called lysozyme, and it can destroy bacteria cell wall linings and discourage adherence of bacteria to the mouth lining. So just like in the gut, where you'll have a bad bacteria strain adhere or attach to a cell receptor on the gut lining, and then it starts to set off inflammatory markers and things like that, cause damage to the intestinal wall lining, all that sort of thing that it can do down in the gut, it can do in the mouth as well. So there's bacteria that needs this adherence. So if you can prevent it from adhering, then it can't do that. There's also something in saliva called lactoferrin, and it's antifungal, antiviral, anti-inflammatory, and it helps the immune system function. And another thing it does is it binds free iron. So if there's iron in the food or in the mouth or whatever, Streptococcus mutans is one of the key bacteria that causes the most damage to the teeth and the gums and all that sort of thing. And it loves iron. A lot of pathogenic bacteria love iron. So do some beneficial bacteria as well, I might add. But if you can bind the iron so that it can't be fed, then obviously it's not going to reproduce and it's going to be able to not cause as much damage. There's an enzyme called peroxidase, which is antimicrobial. There's something called histolins, which are made from the amino acid histidine, and it is antimicrobial for this Streptococcus mutant. P. gingivalis, which of course would be connected to gingivitis, and Candida albicans, which are also present in your, is one of the organisms that are in your mouth naturally. You also have secretory IgA. So if you've done the full healthy gut, then you're familiar with secretory IgA, but we talk about it a lot when we talk about allergies and autoimmunity and its relationship to the gut. Well, it's also present in saliva, and its role is to neutralize viruses, bacteria, and any toxins produced by the bacteria. But it also works with what they call agglutinins, and these are involved with the binding of an antigen to an antibody. So it's an important element of your immune system function, and it's right there in the saliva in your mouth. Now, if you suffer from, say your body has 8% less hydration, like whatever your natural, normal, healthy hydration, if it drops by 8%, it diminishes your salivary flow to 0. So your salivary flow is, of course, how much saliva you have in your mouth and how often. And this is critical for you to benefit from all these products that are in the saliva to help you with managing your microbiome in your mouth. You really need good salivary flow. Alcohol, fasting, your age, too much exercise, all of these things lower salivary flow. And women have less salivary flow than men, and I bet that's not a surprise to you, because if you've ever been walking with some guy and all of a sudden he, spits on the sidewalk, it's because he's got more saliva than we do. But these are just interesting pieces of information, because we don't think about how much saliva is in our mouth. We don't think about making sure we have sufficient. Okay, so there's a woman named Cass Nelson Dooley, and she coined the term leaky mouth. It's not a real term. It's just a coined term, because the mucosa of the mouth is very porous, just like the gut lining. And when you have inflammation and infection in the mouth, it can damage the barrier, just like the gut. And of course, we already know that when this happens in the gut, it plays a role with systemic disease and immune issues. Well, the same thing is happening in the mouth as well. It also, leaky mouth, allows for bacteria and toxins to escape into the bloodstream. And this too is very similar to what happens in the gut. One of the biggest issues for your mouth microbiome is plaque. And you'll notice I put a picture up of a plaque as opposed to putting a picture of plaque up, because plaque's really gross looking. So I just thought I'd put a picture of a plaque up. So essentially what plaque is a massive bacteria, and it's growing on the surface within the mouth, usually around the teeth and the gums. It's also known as biofilm, and it's basically sticky, colorless, and it sort of deposits on there until it forms tartar, and then it becomes brown and pale yellow. It's very hard. It's not squishy. It's very hard. If you've been to the dentist, you know how hard it is for them to get that off of you. Plaque is also known as microbial plaque or oral biofilm. So when we discuss how intestinal dysbiosis is linked to so many health conditions, what I'm asking you to do is now think of mouth dysbiosis in a similar light. And we cannot consider, sorry, I already said that. And the other issue, though, which is different from the gut, is that the pathogenic bacteria is hardened into the plaque, which makes it much harder to remove. So it's just like stuck on there on certain areas of your teeth or your gums. And that makes it a lot different than what's going on in the intestines. That makes it more likely to cause problems, because there's no zonulin to be released and open up the gut lining and flush everything out of the mouth the way you have that in the gut. So like it's different. I think it's a little more serious in regard to that. There's a condition called periodontitis, and it refers to the inflammation of the tissue surrounding the teeth. And this is what's playing a role with receding gums and the loosening of teeth. It is considered a factor in systemic disease. And there's 3 pathways where mouth infections can affect other systems throughout the body. So the first is if you have an infection in the mouth, because the bacteria is transient and because of leaky mouth. And when I say transient, don't get that confused with transient bacteria like we get from probiotics and fermented foods. By transient, I mean it can move. It's not stuck in one spot. So it can move from the oral cavity into the blood and spread the infection into the body. Another thing is it can do is if there's an injury from the effects of what's circulating in the toxins that are circulating in the mouth, and those enter into the bloodstream. Is very similar when you have toxins in the gut entering into the bloodstream. This can spread to other systems, and we've linked all kinds of toxins from bad bacteria playing havoc on the brain and the nervous system and the liver and the circulatory system. And of course, there's the spread of inflammation caused by the oral microorganisms that are pathogenic and therefore are promoting inflammatory products throughout the body. And this may affect the host susceptibility to systemic disease in 3 ways. So now that you've got this table sort of set, the host is more susceptible to developing other diseases. The first is by shared risk factors. So some diseases that are in our body have a risk factor that is similar to something that causes a problem in the mouth microbiome. So for example, smoking, which I'll talk about later, is a risk factor for heart disease, but it's also a risk factor of having dysbiosis in your mouth. The same is true of age, the same is true of stress. So anything that has an overlap, alcohol, okay, there's certain things that kind of overlap that is going to make the person more susceptible to systemic disease, because not only is it a factor for the disease itself, it's a factor for mouth dysbiosis. You have subgingival biofilms that are acting as reservoirs, or you want to call them holding tanks for gram-negative bacteria, and they're producing LPS. Again, I don't know how far any of you are in healthy gut, and I know not all of you are in healthy gut, but LPS is lipopolysaccharides, and this is a toxin that is produced by bad bacteria that has been linked to autism, Alzheimer's, heart disease, damaging the liver, inflammation, you name it. So it's getting a lot of talk. And there are other endotoxins that are produced by the bacteria as well. So that's playing a role in helping you develop other conditions in the body as well, because as we just mentioned, thanks to leaky mouth, you can actually get these things into the bloodstream as well. And they're also acting as a reservoir for inflammatory mediators, so they are stimulating the production of inflammatory markers like TNF-alpha and PG2, and of course that's going to set off inflammation. So you can see that a lot of what we're talking about and some of the problems going on with the bacteria and what it's kind of doing to the body is providing the same kind of environment for other health conditions in the body to develop that is very similar to the gut. Okay, so it makes it an important focus, I believe, for reversing health issues, and one that we're going to talk about what you can do later on. Okay, so let's just talk about a few conditions that they have linked more directly. So heart disease is probably the one that's been researched the most. And so essentially, you've got bacteria that are linked to tooth decay and gum disease entering the circulatory system, and they have found residues of those bacteria in damaged artery tissues in the body. But they also cause the liver to release C-reactive protein. So C-reactive protein is an inflammatory marker that has been linked to the development of heart disease. So it's now something that they can measure in the blood. I'd like to say they do it, but they don't, unless you ask for it, and then you probably have to pay for it. But looking for C-reactive protein in the blood and having high levels of it is considered a marker that the person could be at risk for developing heart disease. Of course, C-reactive protein is an inflammatory marker, so it is going to set off inflammation in the entire circulatory system. And C-reactive protein has been known to increase due to bacteria, so bad bacteria, particularly Streptococcus A, which is one of the main streptococci that is involved with strep throat. Plus, CRP is linked to many conditions, including autoimmunity. So it's not just heart disease where we don't want to see high CRP levels. Allergies. So we've got a back and forth here. So if you have airborne allergies, that naturally lowers saliva. And as we already talked about how important saliva is at keeping your mouth microbiome healthy. And it can cause dry mouth, which of course means you don't have enough saliva. And this is linked to increase in cavities and plaque and all the other health issues that can happen in the mouth. Antihistamines also lower saliva production, as do other drugs. So antidepressants, high blood pressure medications are two that were mentioned that can lower saliva production as well. And there's something called oral tolerance in the mouth, which is very similar to immune tolerance in the gut. So immune tolerance is what you need to have in order to not react to things that are not harmful. So you only have allergies or autoimmunity because you've lost immune tolerance to whatever the substance is that you have a autoimmune condition for or an allergy to. So you have a similar process that is going to reduce hypersensitivities to substances in the mouth. So when people are reacting to foods, you may think that it may be actually starting as a loss of immune tolerance or oral tolerance, as they call it, in the mouth, even before it's a problem in the gut. So this is a really interesting piece of information because I never understood, understanding the gut the way I have, why someone, I've had people, they put something in their mouth and their lips swell up. Well, that's because they don't have oral tolerance in their mouth for that substance. And I think oral tolerance is really highly correlated with anaphylactic reactions, because remember, that's where the reaction for anaphylaxis is taking place, in the mouth and the throat, which, closes up, and that's what causes the person to, not be able to breathe. So it's very interesting that this oral tolerance is present in the mouth in a similar fashion to immune tolerance in the gut. They've also found Treg cells present in the oral mucosa, and remember, it's T regulatory cells that give you immune tolerance in the gut. So T regulatory cells are what is giving you oral tolerance in the mouth. Migraines. There's a theory regarding nitrates. So, nitrates are very misunderstood. Nitrates are commonly found in most vegetables, and it's very high in cabbage and beets and other really good foods that we like to recommend. And by the way, what I'm about to say applies to the nitrates that are added to hot dogs, because a nitrate is a nitrate is a nitrate. And so essentially what happens with nitrates when we ingest them is that we convert them to nitrites, and we have bacteria in our mouth that will convert it to nitrites. Then the nitrites need to be converted to something called nitric oxide. Now, our gut bacteria does this, and nitric oxide is actually quite good for us. It helps with brain function. They've shown that nitric oxide is really good for cognitive function. They've even done some studies with people who are suffering from memory loss when they're older, and having beets with lots of nitric, like fermented beet juice with nitric oxide, is really good for them. It also helps with blood vessels and improving circulatory function. However, if you have too much of this type of bacteria that converts the nitrates to nitrites, that means you're more likely to have more nitric oxide. And so the theory is that the nitric oxide is diluting the blood vessels in the brain, and if there's an excess of this, it causes the migraines. So some nitric oxide is good. Too much might be a factor in migraines. Other health conditions, pneumonia has a big link to the mouth. Inflammatory conditions across the board because of the link between having oral problems promoting inflammatory products. So you've got diabetes type 2, you've got autoimmunity, which we've mentioned, cancer, arthritis, osteoporosis, all the nervous and brain conditions. So you're seeing a very similar pattern between the connection of the illnesses that we've connected to the gut, also maybe connected to dysbiosis in the mouth as well. In terms of hormonal issues, both high estrogen and high progesterone, either one or both, increases plaque and gingivitis buildup. And this is especially true during pregnancy. So it's not even, and again, when I say this, remember that when they have done these studies, the persons who are pregnant may not have been doing the best oral health care to maintain the microbiome, their saliva, etc. So always keep that in mind when you hear these kinds of statistics. But this is what they've noticed. There's a lot of women who suffer from problems with their teeth when they're pregnant. Birth control, even a low dose, has been linked to gingivitis. And the same would be true for HRT. During menopause, a decrease in estrogen and progesterone can cause dry mouth, chronic ulcer, jaw shrinkage, and what's known as osteoporosis in the jaw. So remember, that you have a jawbone, you can lose bone density there just as easily as you can lose it in your supportive bones, you know, your hips and your knees and whatever. And that's a really interesting piece of information because, you know, we're taught about osteoporosis being linked to lack of weight-bearing exercises. Well, how do you have a weight-bearing exercise in your jaw? You don't. So I think that gives even more stronger emphasis that osteoporosis has a bacteria connection and inflammation connection, which is kind of where they're going with it now. We talked about that in the Healthy Gut program. And of course, you know, you have to consider gut bacteria as a factor anytime you're dealing with any kind of condition, let alone one that has an inflammatory aspect to it, which osteoporosis does. But now, if you can get it in the jaw under the similar circumstances, then that's even kind of more evidence that we are looking at inflammation and bacteria as a factor in osteoporosis. Not saying you still don't do a weight-bearing exercise because it's good for you, and I'm certainly sure that helps bones, but it's not the only factor for osteoporosis by a long shot. Okay, now there's some things that are really bad for lowering good bacteria in the mouth. Smoking is one. So they did a study of 1,204 people, combination of smokers and non-smokers, and found that smokers' mouth bacteria was substantially different than non-smokers. And the good news is there was no difference between former smokers and people who had never smoked. So that means if somebody stops smoking, they can recover their mouth microbiome based on what the smoking has caused. So what they found is that it increased 150 strains of certain bacteria. Most of them were Streptococcus. And it lowered 70 others, mainly Proteobacteria. And Proteobacteria plays a role in the mouth by breaking down toxins. So that means you're going to have less ability to break down toxins. And while Streptococcus went up, they didn't really say whether it was good or bad or both. I'm sure it was both. You still need the other players there to be present in the right amounts as well. They also found that oxygen decreases oxygen, of course, we know that, which inhibit certain types of aerobic bacteria and increases the acidity in the mouth, which promotes more acid bacteria like Streptococcus and Lactobacillus. Now, Lactobacillus is a good thing, and there's certain streps that are good things, but there's also, as we saw, much more prevalence to Streptococcus in the mouth versus Lactobacillus, and therefore you have a better than average chance of having more the negative strep than the positive strep. Because smoking also interferes with saliva production. So if you want to inhibit, it's great to increase Streptococcus, but you need to be able to inhibit naturally the bad ones so that the good ones are the ones that are thriving. And every time you have saliva issues, you're going to be tampering with the balance of the microbiome. Alcohol. Chronic drinking causes plaque buildup and tooth loss because it does kill bacteria, but it kills bad more than good. And just like in the gut, where the bad bacteria has a better ability to respond when killed than good does, the same is true in the mouth. And of course, if you know any very serious alcoholics, you know how bad their teeth are and how many of them lose teeth. The good news is it doesn't cause much damage to moderate drinkers. So if you like your wine, don't worry about it. And more importantly, red wine can inhibit pathogenic Streptococcus. So there you go. More red wine for everybody who wants it. Now, one of the things I read is they suggest that you drink alcohol through a straw. I'm not sure that's going to limit the damage it can do inside the microbiome, but I'm not sure that's a really good idea on many other levels. Okay, so why is all this important? Well, how often do you ask your clients about their teeth? Do you ask them how often they brush, or if they use mouthwash, or if they floss, or how often they go to the dentist, or when was the last time they had their teeth cleaned. Do you ask them those questions? And then, of course, you're looking at other habits that they may have. You may see that they smoke or they drink alcohol, but you probably didn't put it into the context of, that's not good for their mouth. We focus on the gut, but how many of the symptoms that are they having are really starting in the mouth? And so you work really hard to fix the gut, but the mouth still has a problem. Therefore, the symptoms may not be going away the way you like. So I think this is a really important consideration because, just based on some of the Facebook posts that have been in there and some of the emails that I get with people saying, they were doing so well and now they're not, and they've backslid. So could that be because the mouth wasn't taken care of, or is it that some of the symptoms that don't go away are more related to the mouth than they were to the gut? Like, hard to say, but I think it's really important for us to be thinking about this and asking these questions of clients. And you have to consider symptoms like headaches and gas and bloating and muscle and joint and chronic inflammation, constipation, diarrhea, skin issues, brain fog. All the same symptoms we consider with gut dysbiosis could be a result either in part or in some cases totally due to the mouth. Probably not, that would be rare. I would say it's usually going to be a combination of both. But if you don't remove the mouth issue while you're working on the gut, they may not see the turnaround that they're looking for. Okay, in terms of probiotics, so now, of course, they're studying what probiotics can help. So the bacteria that causes most of the problems in the mouth is called Streptococcus mutans. And so they're looking at different probiotics that may counter pathogenic bacteria, in particular this one. There's one that I read about called Lactobacillus anticaries, but the research has only been done by the company that makes it, and the company is BASF. I've not seen it here in Canada. I don't know if it's available. It's a company out of Germany. But there's been two others studied. They're both Streptococcus salivarius. One is K12 and the other is M18. So that's the strain, the specific strain. And in both cases, the studies have shown that this particular Streptococcus lowers plaque, inhibits S mutans, and lessens the amount of cavities and lowers halitosis, which of course is bad breath. And I'm sure you've probably already made the connection that if you have bad breath, you have dysbiosis of your mouth, no matter what. That's a sure sign. Other things that are going to play a role, obviously diet and lifestyle is going to have the same effect on the mouth microbiome as we see in the gut. So all the foods that are good for the gut are good for the mouth. But in the case of the mouth, how much you chew really is really important, because the saliva is going to mix in with the food, and this is going to control what bacteria makes it into the GI tract where you have that 45% overlap. So chewing the food is not only good for the mouth microbiome and, of course, overall digestion, but it's also really important for how the mouth microbiome either helps or doesn't help the GI tract. Sleep is also important. Preferably you sleep with your mouth closed because you're going to have less dry mouth. And don't try taping your mouth shut. It doesn't work. Saliva is highest in the afternoon and lowest at night. So you're even more prone to dry mouth at night when you're sleeping because you already have low saliva levels. And of course, lower stress. So stress is playing a similar role. It can cause dry mouth. It can cause inhibition of bacteria, just like it does in the gut. So what can you do? Well, just mention the importance of sugar. Chewing. Sugar's coming up next. So you want to chew foods thoroughly. And the chewing motion alone stimulates saliva function. So if your mouth is ever dry and you don't have water handy, and a matter of fact, this would be better for you than drinking water, unless you think you're dehydrated. But let's say you're talking a lot. If you just fake chew. Like just close your mouth and pretend you're chewing food. You'll see how quickly saliva fills your mouth, and that's really, really good for you. And if you do a lot of smoothies, chew your smoothies. So while the smoothie, just hold the sip that you have in there, do a little chew action to get some saliva in there, and then swallow. Much better for you on many levels. Sugar is not bad when it's mixed with plenty of saliva. So sugar can feed bad bacteria, but sugar can also feed good bacteria too. But when there's plenty of saliva mixed in, then it's going to inhibit, because of all those chemicals that I mentioned earlier when we were talking about saliva, it's going to inhibit the bad bacteria, feed the good bacteria, and not be so much of a problem. But it has to be sugar that's in a food that you chew. Candy doesn't work. Candy is the very, very worst for teeth, because what do? You suck on a candy, and of course it's just coating your teeth with sugar, and that's really, really bad. Not a lot of saliva involved. Like, candy's bad. No candy. Same with gum with sugars. Again, you're just chewing that sugar right into the teeth. Yes, gum chewing does produce some saliva, but not a lot. So just something to think about. So you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater if you want to put some nice organic sugar or sucanat or something in with your muffins, not a problem. But just watch out for candy. Stay hydrated, and you don't want to exercise too much, because that causes dehydration and will produce less saliva. Don't smoke, as we already mentioned. Don't drink too much, as we already mentioned. Don't use alcohol-based mouthwashes, and that's probably what a lot of people who are doing, who probably have pretty good oral habits. So maybe they brush, maybe they floss, maybe they see the dentist, and then they use that icky alcohol-based mouthwashes. So that is something we can really help discourage people from doing. Toothpaste with essential oils, I think, are a must. I've had situations, I've been using toothpaste, just ones I buy at the health store with essential oils in them for years, have very little problem with my teeth. And then for some reason I run out, and I am not somewhere where I can get one, and I accidentally buy, well, I don't accidentally, because I buy it on purpose, Colgate or something like that. And because I've bought it, I'm going to use it up, and I do this for 2 or 3 weeks. And then I notice my teeth start to get sore. Then it's like, okay, don't use these things. Now you can also use essential oils directly on your teeth. Peppermint, which is my favorite, is fabulous for teeth. So you can put some drops on a toothbrush and just brush your teeth with it. Cloves are really good. Cinnamon, spearmint, eucalyptus, rosemary. I would say cloves and peppermint are the top two. But you can also buy an essential oil blend. This is one I'm buying right now called Body Food Dental. So again, it's just a combination of essential oils, and I get that at my local health food store. doTERRA has one called On Guard, which of course doTERRA is an MLM company, so it's not something I go near, but I think you can also buy it online without having to sign up with anybody, just to get the product. Or maybe if you know somebody who sells doTERRA, they'll just sell you that and not bug you about signing up under them and all that sort of thing. And what these essential oils do is kill the bad bacteria, but not the good. And so they're very, very, very helpful at maintaining good oral health. You want to make sure, if you are using any essential oils directly, and it's not a formula that you bought, because obviously the formulas would be food grade, you want to make sure they're food grade essential oils, and you're not swallowing them. You are just brushing your teeth, and then you're rinsing and spitting out. Other things you can do, and this is a really good one, and I was never a big fan of oil pulling, because if you ever go on the oil pulling sites, a lot of them are making huge claims. Oh, it's pulling toxins out of the body, and it's this miracle thing. And whenever I see stuff like that, it kind of turns me off. But this one makes perfect sense to me from a mouth perspective and mouth microbiome. So a lot of the oil pulling sites will recommend olive oil or sunflower oil or coconut oil, but I say coconut oil because coconut oil contains lauric acid, which is antibacterial, and it contains caprylic acid, which is antifungal. So really, really good. And what you do is you put about a tablespoon of the coconut oil in the mouth for about 20 minutes. When I first started doing this, I melted it because I couldn't even fathom the idea of just sticking a chunk of coconut oil in my mouth. But then that got to be too much work. And so I now just put it in my mouth and it melts pretty quickly. So you do this as soon as you wake up. You don't take a sip of water when you wake up, nothing like that. Just into the mouth it goes. And you set the timer for 20 minutes. And as it's melting there and you've got the liquid, and you'll feel the saliva, by the way, come into the coconut oil as well, which is great. And you swish it around so you're getting it all over the place and covering the whole mouth and whatever. And then when the 20 minutes are up, you spit it out and rinse with water and then spit that out and then brush your teeth. And now you can drink some water. Really, really, really good process. I've been doing it. Actually, a student recommended that she'd been doing it. She has gorgeous teeth. And I thought, you know what? I can do this. This is something I can do. And I've been doing it for a bit now. And at first I was doing it every day, and now I do it maybe 4 times a week. I noticed I get less headachy. I feel better. My teeth feel good. It's really nice. So this is a really good thing to recommend. And again, gives us something we can help clients do. And I know it won't appeal to all clients, but it's a good one. You can buy probiotics for the mouth. AOR has the breath biotics. And they're lozenges. It's wintergreen flavor. You put it in your mouth. Speaking of dry mouth. And you just let it dissolve in the mouth. And that's all there is to it. You don't chew it. And then there's another one called Culture Care Probiotic Gum. And both of these have Streptococcus salvarius K12. And so that's the one that they've found helps inhibit plaque and cavities and all that sort of stuff. So this is something good that people can take on a regular basis. And again, because they're sitting in the mouth, like so the gum you're chewing for a bit, and of course the lozenge is dissolving, it's staying in the mouth. That's the biggest problem with the mouth. So you can't really keep much in the mouth for very long before you swallow and it's gone, right? And then, of course, professional teeth cleaning is also very important. So if you've got somebody with a plaque buildup and they haven't been to the dentist, they need to go to the dentist, get those teeth cleaned. You could get it cleaned over time doing the oil pulling and the breath biotics and the essential oils and good brushing and all that stuff, but they're going to see better results faster if they just go get their teeth cleaned. Okay, so I think this is a really important element that you want to add to protocols. I think it's a conversation you want to have with your clients. And I think if we, based on what we've talked about, hopefully you see the role of the mouth differently than perhaps you saw it before. Clients really need to be educated about this because it's still, you know, when I was looking up research, I was still finding all kinds of stuff about killing bacteria in the mouth and how great that was. We don't want to go there. We don't want to go there any more than we want to kill bacteria in our gut. And they may be surprised at how much changing their oral habits makes them feel better. So that's the end of my presentation. And now I'm going to find you and come back. Okay. Do you guys have any questions? What do we got here? This is back to what I said. Alternative can be an excellent adjunct to mainstream as well. The combination can be amazing. We have to be careful to support the individual's choices. Very true, Judy. Mary's asking, can we get a copy of the PowerPoint? Yes, I will send it out with the replay tomorrow. Melanie says, I like using essential oils. I find some are a bit hot, strong, powerful, so be careful on the lips. That is very true with peppermint for sure. Diana says, I have a lot of elderly clients. Any info on denture powder creams on the mouth or gut microbiome? Not really, but I would, like the coconut pulling would be really good for them. The essential oils, if they're not too strong for them, would be really good. Marty's asking, what do I think of teeth whitening strips? Not a lot. They are very harsh on the teeth. And I know why people want to use them. But the oil pulling really helps that. The essential oils really help that. So I would try to avoid them. Carol's asking, thoughts on activated charcoal for cleaning teeth? Well, my friend Marina recommended a toothpaste. What's the name of the toothpaste? I don't even know what it's called.
I don't remember, but I can go get it and let you know.
Okay. So this has activated charcoal in it. So I bought it because my favorite toothpaste, so I like using an essential oil blend, but I also like having a toothpaste on hand because sometimes I just want a toothpaste. And I was using a lovely toothpaste called from Nuco, but for some reason my health food store stopped selling it, which really annoyed me. I really don't like it when my health food store makes decisions for me. Anyway, so Marina recommended that product right there. What's it called? Activated charcoal toothpaste. Do you have the tube in there? Show them what it looks like. No, show them what the actual goo looks like.
What the what?
The goo looks like in the tube.
This one's not open. I'll show you when it's open.
So I started to use that, but I just want you to see what it looks like because that kind of scared me. Yeah, I wouldn't try turmeric for whitening teeth. That doesn't make sense to me because turmeric. Okay. Put it on your finger. They can't see the contrast. Put just a little bit on your finger. Where's your finger? Okay. Yeah,
I'm trying to get it there. Hang on.
Okay. See how black that is? Well, when you brush with this, your teeth are all black, and then you got to rinse and rinse and rinse and rinse, and it.
Yeah, and like, you wash your sink after.
Yeah, so that didn't go over well with me, but it is a good product. Okay, and this toothpaste also has bentonite in it. I see Andrea's mentioning about earth paste, and it has bentonite in it. So all of these things are drawing toxins. They're all trying to inhibit bad bacteria and such, and they are very good. What you have to do is try to help the client find the one that works for them.
That one actually whitens too. Sorry to interrupt, but it says it whitens on it.
It says it whitens, but there's just something about it I can't get my head past because it's black. When I'm looking at it, it makes my teeth look black. I know, and I know. Joanne also says, what about a sea salt rinse? Again, that's going on the inhibiting bacteria perspective. It's very similar to fermenting foods, right? Because you put salt in to inhibit the bad bacteria. And again, if it's a sea salt, it can be very cleansing. I don't think it's necessary if you have a good clean water. I wouldn't use chlorinated water, but yeah. Okay, what do we got here?
By the way, that toothpaste has got a bunch of essential oils in it as well, in case people didn't know.
Okay, thank you, Marina. Sorry, I was just reading the questions there. So Rani is asking, how do you distinguish symptoms from the mouth from the gut since they're similar? That's the $50 million question. So I think you can't at this time. I think that it's a two-prong approach now that you're going to have for the gut. You're going to include some good strategies for the mouth, and hopefully doing the combination of both. I call me lucky or unlucky. I kind of stumbled upon this because my gut was good, but I was having these issues, and it occurred to me that it was my teeth, and I won't go into all the details as why it occurred to me it was my teeth. And then I started doing some of these strategies, and the problem I was having went away. And it happened to be not major headaches, but kind of this low, kind of dull grade headache. I didn't have it every day, but I was having it much more frequently than I should. And I didn't accidentally, I did it on purpose. I put some peppermint oil on my teeth for another reason, and the headache went away, and it's kind of like a light bulb went off. And I don't know that, you're going to get that kind of, because depending on what stage you get the client at, that's the problem, right? I've done a lot of work. I'm at a certain stage, things are working well, things are, and therefore when I do simple things, I tend to see one way or another if they're going to work or not. And a lot of times when you have the client, you're starting from scratch. So I would just approach it that you're going to work on the mouth no matter what, and again, if you see they've got perfect teeth and they, have no plaque, and, they're well hydrated, and they don't smoke, and they don't drink, and they, maybe are already using good substances for their teeth, for their brushing their teeth and stuff, then I wouldn't worry about it. But if you see anything like mouthwash, or, they complain about having dry mouth, or, they think saliva is evil, or, like whatever, like have a conversation with them. And then if you see there's some issues, then maybe it's playing a role. Okay, Melanie says that she makes her own tooth oil and mouthwashes, and she will share it with the Facebook group. Thank you, Melanie, because you know what? I bought a bunch of essential oils that I want to make into my own, because even though I bought this one drop, I can never get the one drop. Oh, no, it's not called one drop. It used to be called one drop. This body food, I can't get it out of there's never a drop on there. So, yeah, I bought some more to make my own. Joanne says, I have oral lichen planus that I can't seem to get rid of. At times, it seems when I am restrictive with diet that it gets better, but easily flares up and never goes away. I have impeccable oral hygiene. Because I was reading quite a bit about lichen planus being connected to mouth microbiome problems. So when you say you have impeccable oral hygiene, do you use any straight essential oils as part of your oral hygiene? See, I'm wondering, obviously if you don't have plaque buildup, that's not a concern, but there might be something on a daily basis that's happening with your saliva that may be playing the role. And of course, when you eat certain foods, it's because it's very similar to gut problems. It might be why you've noticed a flare-up. So that's all I can think of off the top of my head, Joanne. But definitely I saw some research about the lichen planus and the connection. Andrea is asking, have I seen any research on the negative effects of fluoride on mouth microbiome? Would love to see some. I didn't look, I'll be perfectly honest, and I will look, and if I'll look tonight, and if I find anything, I'll post it in the replay email that I send out tomorrow. But I would expect that there is, because it doesn't make sense. If it's inhibiting cavities, how does it inhibit cavities? The approach has always been kill the bacteria. So it must kill the bacteria. Therefore, it has to be having an effect on the mouth microbiome, because we know what happens when you kill bacteria through non-natural means. Remember, the essential oils are inhibiting, they're working very synergistically, whereas chlorine, antibiotics, things like that, they don't work that way. So I wouldn't be surprised to find something, but I'll look. I'll see if I can find anything. Mary says, wait, sorry. Okay, bye, Melanie. What about the tongue? Several clients have a coating on their tongue first thing in the morning. Is that symbiosis of the mouth? I mean, dysbiosis of the mouth? Yes. So when your mouth dries out, that's natural. So the reason you have morning breath is because the mouth is dried out and the bad bacteria is there and not enough good bacteria, not enough saliva, and therefore you have the coating on the tongue, you have the smelly breath, and so that's what that is. But that can go away quickly with some good brushing, get that saliva going, rehydrate, etc. And you're right as Reina. So I wouldn't be overly concerned with that. I'd be more concerned with that if you see that during the daytime, right, when the saliva is high. Joanna's saying, I use homemade toothpaste with essential oils and coconut oil and baking soda and mineral drops. Okay. But have you done the oil pulling? You ever done oil pulling, Joanne? And I know it's this Joanne Lapierre, because I think you bought the breath biotics, didn't you? Because you were all happy when it showed up in full script, if this is Joanne Lapierre.
Maybe that's when the charcoal might be handy as well.
Maybe the charcoal? I would try it all. I'm going to go find that information that I saw in the Lichen Planus. Leanne's saying, great topic. I'm a RHN and dental hygienist and have been stressing the importance of looking at the mouth when addressing health. Well, I'm glad then you've now got all the backup information so far as we have it. Carol's saying in Chinese medicine, they always look at the tongue for coating. Yeah, but as I said, it's very normal. Again, it's not a thick coating. If it's a thick coating first thing in the morning, that's not good either, but it's just a little coating in the morning, that's pretty normal. Marianne, what could be the explanation if someone's teeth seem to have the outer front part wearing off? Are they experiencing any acids that could be wearing away at the teeth? That's the first thing that comes to mind. So Joanne is answering the question about the breath biotics. She did buy them, but she hasn't been consistent. I think they irritate, but not sure. Well, when I bought them, there was a recommendation that you take it for different circumstances, 1 to 2 twice a day. So the thing is that how do I put this? I've noticed this, that when you're doing some things for the mouth that are quite strong, that because you can't really feel what's going on in your intestines the way you can feel it in your mouth. And so it's like I can feel something happening, like there's a little fight going on there, and that may be uncomfortable. So maybe that's what you experience with the breath biotics. Don't really know. I did discuss the turmeric, and that I said, I don't know if it helps whiten teeth. I'd be shocked if it did, since it turns everything yellow, including your fingers and your fingernails. And I would be very hesitant to put it on my teeth. What I would suggest you do, if you want to try it, find a tooth back here, stick it on that tooth, and see if it turns your teeth yellow before you try to use it to whiten your teeth.
Right, can I just add to that?
Sure.
When we eat food with turmeric, if it doesn't turn our teeth yellow by eating all that turmeric in the food, I think it would be okay, right?
That's diluted.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I also wanted to add,
because it doesn't dye your finger or your nail yellow if you touch the food that has the turmeric in it. But trust me, as somebody who's had to put turmeric in honey, and I get turmeric as soon as I get it on my finger, my fingernail is yellow, and then when I wash it off, it looks like a yellow fingernail, and that's a hard nail, right? That's not even.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It's just That's my first reaction. I wouldn't be surprised. I know turmeric has antimicrobial properties, so I could see it being beneficial. I'm just very concerned about that color thing.
That makes sense. Also, I just wanted to add about the wearing off of the teeth. I usually tell my clients, you know how a lot of us recommend lemon water in the morning? I usually tell my clients to brush their teeth before they have the lemon water, because the lemon water will soften the enamel, and then if they brush right after, then they're kind of over time they're brushing away the enamel.
Yeah, but how strong is the lemon water?
Juice of half a lemon.
Yes, it's not very strong though, right? And these are all concerns, right? These are all things you have to think about it, because we don't know how hard or what kind of condition the teeth are in the first place. So there are, some people just are born with better quality teeth than other people. And then of course, depending on what they went through when they were growing up, determines the quality of their teeth as well. So there's other factors that we have to consider. It's kind of unnerving, and basically the things that I've been recommending, I'm fairly comfortable with. I'm even comfortable with that charcoal thing. It's just something that hasn't won me over yet. Okay, so Leanne is saying mechanically grinding or clenching can cause deterioration of the enamel, so that's for you, Marianne. Carol's saying Megan Talbner gives a recipe with turmeric toothpaste, but I didn't have the nerve to try it. I would have trouble trying it. Carrie says, sorry I jumped on late. I don't know if you already covered it, but what about xylitol? I did come across research that was showing some benefits using xylitol, which is why they're adding it to gums. I'm just not a very big fan of xylitol because I know what it does to the gut. Not that I'm thinking you're getting a lot if you were using it for your teeth, but yeah, I'm just not a big fan of the sugar alcohols at all, whether it's xylitol, erythritol, maltitol, sorbitol. Yeah, no, I'm not a fan. Joanne says she's too chicken too. She says, "What I'm telling you, Joanne, stick some turmeric on a back tooth that you can't see, because if it is going to color it yellow, or mix it in with a little bit of coconut oil and just put a little on the tooth there, just kind of hold it there, and then see what happens. And if it doesn't, then you're good to go. Give it a try, but put it somewhere where you can't see." That's what I would do. Andrea says, I ask clients to save the lemon water for meals and stick to plain water between meals to spare the enamel. That's a good suggestion. Marianne says, thank you. Mary says, great presentation. Thank you both. Carrie says, turmeric will only stain plaque or bacteria. But what if you have plaque or bacteria? And then you have stained plaque. Don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of turmeric. I think it's a fabulous. I just know how conscious, and again, we're talking about, we'll do anything to ourselves, right? We do everything to ourselves. But I'm very leery about recommending things to other people to have them come back to me and say, you made my teeth yellow, even if it's just the plaque that's yellow. So again, I would hope that it would work, and because as I said, it's a great substance. But you've got cloves. I'm a big fan of cloves. I like peppermint a lot. It's my preferred one because I like the taste of peppermint. But in terms of health benefits, cloves is an amazing thing. Cinnamon is another one that's really good. There's a lot of really good things you could use besides turmeric. So you've got room to play so that you have options for clients. Carrie says, then it shows where to remove it. That's very true, Carrie. That's when you go right to the dentist and say, see everywhere, it's nice and yellow, please get rid of that. Joanne says, thanks, Lorraine, great info, interested in the lichen planus info. Okay, so I'll track that down for you. Norma Jean says, thank you. Carrie says, I'm a hygienist and oral health coach and use it to help them see where they are missing. Oh, that's a plan. Okay, great info says, Carrie, it looks like the questions have stopped. So that is good. I'm glad you got them all in there. And so I hope this was helpful. Leanne says, I learned that lichen planus is considered an autoimmune condition. Has this information changed at all? Joanne, are your tissues peeling and sloughing? Or when you rub the area where the affected tissue is, does it rub off or remain? The main issue is when you rub, is the tissue raw? Okay, I will look up the information about whether it's autoimmune or considered it at this time. And I will put that in the email. So Joanne is saying, no, Leanne, just peeling in the white areas only. So does that mean something, Leanne? It's that it's just the white areas? Diana says she's going to try oil pulling tomorrow. It's kind of gross at first, but you get used to it. And your family thinks you're strange because they're talking to you and you're going, and you can't say anything. And I sneezed the other day. And I spit out the... And I was trying to keep my mouth shut. I may not have spit it out if I'd opened my mouth a little bit. No, that was the only downside. That's only happened once. I don't know if Leanne's still there, or if she's typing, or she's... I will give her a couple more minutes just in case, Joanne. Leanne is saying, I've seen that the white areas can be from grinding, clenching through the night. So maybe could that be a factor, Joanne? Joanne says, I've heard not to spit the oil in the sink as it can block the drains. Yes, that is true. Not that I do that. I spit it into the garbage. Although the last 2 mornings I did it, I spit it into the sink, which I've never done before. Diana says they already think I'm strange. Yeah, I know. I think that's all our we all have that experience with our family. It's like, oh, there's another thing she's doing. She goes, Leanne's saying, especially when the white areas do not remove and aren't raw. So Joanne doesn't think she is. I don't know how you tell if somebody's clenching their teeth or grinding their teeth throughout the night. If you sleep really well, you might not know. You might be in too deep a sleep. So, okay. I think we are done now. And Helen says, thank you. Joanne says, don't being strange come with RHN designation? Yes, we should really change it to RSN, registered strange nutritionist. Shannon says, I have a disposable cup that I spit my oil pulling into and then throw away after a few days. That's a good idea. I just spit it into the garbage, the compost garbage, with all the other compostables in it. Okay. All right, thank you everyone for attending. If you have any other questions, either email me, or if you want to keep this going, you can post it in the Facebook group. But I'll definitely send out the PowerPoints. I've got the references and the lichen planus information that I can find. I will put in there as well. Okay. Everybody have a good night. And by the way, there'll be another, I haven't picked the date yet, but there'll be another webinar in September on SIBO versus candidiasis, because they kind of are the same and kind of overlap in terms of symptoms. And I've got some really good information for you on that, and also on things that cause problems with gut motility and what that is linked to with regards to both candidiasis and SIBO. So that'll be sometime in September, probably around the mid-month like this, and that will be the September webinar. So in the meantime, we'll see you in the Facebook group or in emails you send me. Have a good evening, and we will talk soon.
Good night, everyone.